This episode of Rookie Hunter is brought to you by the Wild Sheep Foundation. Adventures in sheep country can change your life, and as residents of BC, we're very fortunate to have 3 different species of sheep in our province. After attending the Wild Sheep Foundation's annual convention, Sheep Show, in Reno, Nevada, we got to see what conservation looks like firsthand. The Wild Sheep Foundation's ability to raise and put millions of dollars on the ground each year to keep these majestic animals on the mountaintops worldwide is unmatched. The Wild Sheep family is a diverse group of people from all walks of life, and membership is open to anyone. Whether you're a seasoned pro, it's your first time on the mountain, or you just like to see sheep on the hillside, you can sign up and join today. Kelly and I are lifetime members, but you can become an annual member for just $45. You can also become a member of the Less Than One Club, which is the only club you want to get kicked out of. If you've never taken a North American or international ram, you can join us in the Less Than One Club for an extra $25. Plus, Less Than One Club membership also includes entry into a draw for 3 separate Dall sheep hunts, which will be given away at Sheep Show in 2019. For more information on the Wild Sheep Foundation and to become a member, head over to wildsheepfoundation.org. Hey guys, welcome to episode 70. No intro today. This is a special episode. This is our feature on the Jurassic Classic.
Go for it. Hey, buddy.
Double header.
Hey, buddy.
Worked out all right.
Okay, we got 2, he says. Unless we got the same fish, they're going the same way.
I'm Kyle Stelter. I'm with the Wild Sheep Society of BC. The Jurassic Classic, basically, it's a weekend fishing experience, and we call it the Wild Sheep Jurassic Classic. And what it is, it's an opportunity for us to get together, and we bring teams all across North America from the wild sheep community and other organizations too. The SCI supported us, as well as other chapters and affiliates. And we come out and we get together and we go out in the water and we go fishing for some sturgeon and get these gigantic dinos on.
So August 17th, we loaded up the truck with a little bit of fishing gear and clothes for a couple nights, and also loaded up the Yeti to the rim with some cold beer. And we headed west for Chilliwack, BC to take part in the Jurassic Classic on the Fraser River. We had some events taking place on the Friday night there. Kel, give us a bit of a breakdown of what was happening.
Yeah, so we checked in. Everybody picked up a little gift bag and their name tags. We walked into the banquet room. There was introductions that happened. Relatively small group of people in terms of an event like this. So everybody kind of got to meet each other, which was great. And then we jumped into the guide auctions. So Dean Work from Great River Fishing essentially introduced each one of his guides in an entertaining and fun way. And then from there, Trevor Carruthers from the Wild Sheep Society of BC took over and ran the auction. So it was a great start to the event.
Let's jump into a clip here while we're talking about the guides and Great River fishing adventures. This is Rick. We were just cruising around on the morning of Saturday and asked him a few questions. So this gives you a bit of insight into sturgeon fishing on the river. How long you been guiding here?
I was the 22nd guide on the Fraser River.
Oh, really?
And now there's pushing 800.
Holy shit.
So 1993.
Okay.
So Dean got his license in, I think, 89, to give you an idea. And literally, and we didn't have these boats. Like back then, it was a different world altogether. And Dean's not wrong when he says nobody sturgeon fished. Like people didn't guide for sturgeon. My brother's a conservation officer, and he can't understand it. He's been doing that for over 30 years now. And he's just like, they used to be shit fish. They used to be trash fish that no one cared about.
Yeah.
Now it's this huge, it is, right now it's probably sitting at about 85% of our business.
Wow. The risk of sounding boring, Kelly, I'm going to read off some facts about the Fraser River that I hijacked from the Canadian Encyclopedia.ca. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay, so the Fraser River is the longest river in British Columbia. It stretches 1,375 kilometers. It begins on the western side of the Rocky Mountains at Mount Robson Provincial Park. It ends in the Strait of Georgia at Vancouver. So the Fraser River is home to one of the most productive salmon fisheries, which we got to witness. One of the most productive salmon fisheries in the world, actually, supporting 5 species of Pacific salmons, which is sockeye, coho, chum, chinook, and pink. One of the greatest threats to the river, and I'm not sure if this is still a huge threat, but the impacts are still there, is the ongoing mountain pine beetle epidemic here in British Columbia. So the loss of living trees through mountain pine beetle infestation, as well as clear-cut forestry practices, increase the rate of rainfall and snowmelt runoff into the river. So that's obviously kind of goes without saying the impact that can have on a river when you're dealing with that type of runoff.
I think they kind of have control of the pine beetle, but the impacts of that pine beetle are still there.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But there's my facts for you on the Fraser River. Kelly, you got some good stuff on sturgeon, which is obviously what we're up there to fish for. So drop some knowledge on me.
Yeah, so I think the sturgeon is just an amazing animal, and this has given us an opportunity to kind of look more into their history and what they're all about. The white sturgeon is what we're looking at from a Fraser River perspective, but there are some greens in there. Worldwide, there's up to I think 20 to 30 different types of sturgeon. The white sturgeon is only in Western North America, and in Canada, it's only in British Columbia. There's 3 kind of main river systems that they live in: the Fraser, the Nemchaco, and the Sacramento, as well as the Columbia River Basin. The cool thing about sturgeon is they're literally from the Triassic period. Like, they've remained relatively unchanged for about 175 million years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is mind-boggling. Like, they've been through, volcanic disruptions and ice ages and all these things that, you can't even imagine unless you're a Cosmos fan.
And holding those fish and knowing that is just like mind-blowing, man.
Well, there's just something about them, right? Like, to see them in a photo is one thing, but to see them in real life and see how the colors change off some of these surfaces. They can get up to about 13 feet long, the white sturgeon, and they can weigh more than 1,500 pounds. And they can also live up to 150 years. So it's just, the numbers are insane. The one we caught was relatively small, about 4.5 to 5 feet.
Yeah, which I looked up. I think that would probably put it somewhere around like 18, 20 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Like, not too much younger than us. Like, we've got a third on that fish, but it's crazy.
It is.
So the white sturgeon is the largest and longest lived species of freshwater fish in North America. Top of the food chain in the Fraser River.
Right.
And it's a year-round resident of the river. The population, obviously, a fraction of it was historically, but the ministry is estimated populations at about 43,000 fish in the Fraser. I did read that it is a pretty healthy population there. And there's actually been, or could be, some increases in that specific region. I think in the other rivers that we mentioned, it's a much different story.
It is home to the largest population of sturgeon, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. There's been no retention on the Fraser since 1994, by the way. So all this fishing that we're talking about in this episode is all catch and release. The unofficial world record was actually caught by Mr. Work. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, this is from 2012. They caught a monster sturgeon that weighed approximately 1,100 pounds and was 12 feet 4 inches long.
Jeez.
It had a girth of like 43 inches.
Wow.
So they obviously can't, pull this animal out and put it on a scale. And I think that's the only way you can get it into like the worldwide record books. So they have to do calculations based on volume and measurements. Yeah. So, but nonetheless, that's a massive animal. And, I don't think we saw one quite that big on the weekend, but, bottom feeders, and, the bigger they get, I think the smaller ones, they'll eat like crayfish and, stoneflies and like all that kind of stuff. But once they get big, they're starting to eat salmon and, actual fish, and two big threats. One of them relates to that is competition for food. So, we got to watch, make sure they have enough salmon and other fish to eat. And the other thing is quality of water and habitat loss. It always comes back to habitat. So we got to do what we can to ensure that they have spawning grounds and gravel bars and all that kind of stuff. I also read that they can lay up to like 700,000 to 1 million eggs, but they only do that every like 10 years. So they're just a very long-lived, kind of slow-maturing animal, which explains how they live for over 100 years. But yeah, it was amazing to see them.
So Saturday morning, buses arrived at the hotel 8 o'clock or something like that, or they're leaving at 8 o'clock. There were some people struggling to get out the door. The hospitality room was a popular place on Friday night, so it was funny seeing some of these guys crawl their way out. We had a breakfast at the hotel and stuff, everything ready to go. So everybody made it out to the bus on time. I don't think anybody got left behind. And we headed down to the river. And all the boats were lined up along the river, which was a pretty cool sight to see. Engines running, anchors ready to come up. You could feel sort of like an anxious energy from everybody because it's a fishing derby essentially, right? Everybody wants to get out there.
And the guides are anxious because they want to
win. Get to their spot too. Yeah. So it was pretty cool to see everybody kind of filter to the boats. And as soon as everybody was in the boat, the anchors came up. You hear a big clunk and they just hit the throttle and they're out of there. They're like fly out of there pretty quick in those jet boats. So it was kind of fun just to watch that. We were hanging out behind for a bit. The boat that I got on was actually up the river, so we had to hop in the truck and go from a different boat launch. I don't know how I ended up going fishing and you got left behind, but
we had to draw straws basically.
Yeah, but you were helping with some of the volunteer parts, which I think is also very important. Cal, what did you guys get up to that day? We haven't really even talked about it.
Yeah, so I was happy to hang back, hung out with Kyle and Trevor for most of the early morning. I don't know how many trips we did back and forth from that, boat launch back to the hotel. And we did, we were getting coffees for people and all the volunteers were gathering. Multiple trips, bringing chairs and tables and setting everything up back at the park. So yeah, had a great time with those two. Lots of laughs and getting to know each other. And then I kind of like from there converted fully into like volunteer role. So it was just great to participate. And there was how many volunteers were there now? There's probably about 15, I want to say.
There's quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, so we all kind of worked together, and it's not easy putting stuff like this together. And I think when you show up and everybody gets off the boat and it's all ready to go, and you just kind of take it for granted. But to see the amount of work that these folks do and how much they care about the event is pretty awesome. And common theme, these are all great people. Met a few actually that talked about some hunting spots. And,
we got some good tips. Nice work.
Yeah, we got some, they're willing to share information. They're conservation focused people too. So yeah, I had a great time doing that. Actually, there is we talked about the Yeti being full of beer, and we put a little bit of a dent in that. After we were all done, I kind of pulled the cooler out of the truck and, job well done. We opened it up and everybody grabbed a beer. So
we had a nice various selection in there. I think people were happy to see some different beers.
Yeah. So it was a great time.
So yeah, as I said, I got to go out on the river. Rodney Zeman was, we were on his boat. He's actually from the Okanagan here. We had Rick, who you've already heard from, as our guide. And Chris Barker was on the boat with us as well. Also, we had Corey Piersol from Sitka on the boat. So pretty cool little crew of people we had out there. We sort of headed, I guess it would be northeast up towards Hope on the river. Quite a ways up there. We were actually pretty close to Hope. So we went way the heck up there. Rick had some different spots that he wanted to try. So we dropped the lines in a few spots. This clip that I'm going to play is just him talking a bit about the setup that he uses for his rig for sturgeon fishing. So those of you who don't fish, hopefully you get a bit of a visual on this, and guys who fish will probably know exactly how he's setting this thing up. You want to explain the setup that you're setting up here?
Yeah, so what we're doing is a slider rig right here. It's just a piece of PCV tubing with a couple beads up and top and bottom. The whole idea behind it is that as the fish pulls, there's no resistance from the weight. So it's just all on your rod tip bouncing, and they don't have to pick up that weight to actually give you a bite. Right. And then we attach that to a swivel. That's ultimately your stopper. Off of that is going to go, I go a little longer leaders. I go about 4-foot leaders. And we use Maruco semicircle hooks. You don't lose fish on those. This I always double up. And one of the reasons I do a 4-foot leader is that I can always run a pike minnow. So pike minnow, we're going to hook up totally different. We'll go up and catch pike minnows after this. I just didn't want to, I'm not going to buy this without throwing a rod out type idea.
Yep.
But your pike minnows, you half hitch them a bunch of times and you run them backwards. So you lose a bunch of this. But in other words, 4 feet, what it does is it gives them that room to pick it up where you're not jumping to the rod. They can't feel the resistance. They can go left or right. I find a shorter leader, lots of times you'll get a lot of this. And they just let go. And they're wise that way, really wise. These are those hooks. These are Maruco hooks. I snell these. And so rather than tie them with a regular knot, I'll come through like that. I make my loop, and if you ever do any fly tying, I'm just basically whip finishing it. So what this does now is when that drives home, it's always driving that hook into them. So like even with the hook you were using there with an upturned eye, if I put that straight through, that's how it's actually designed. Those are designed to be snelled.
So you heard Rick kind of mention pike minnows. When you first get out there and you drop all your lines and stuff like that, we had 4 off the back of the boat. You start to see the rod tips dropping. And like, oh, got a bite. Oh, we got a bite. You can see it. They kind of go across from rod to rod to rod. And it's not a big hit. It's just like a big, it's a noticeable tap on there. And you think, oh man, we got a sturgeon. And obviously Rick has seen that a million times before. He's like, no, that's a pike minnow. And I think they used to be called squawfish, but that's not so much appropriate anymore. So they refer to them as pike minnows now. And what they do is they're just taking little pieces off of we had like salmon fillets on the hook, and they're just taking bit by bit by bit. And eventually, if you've had your rod out there for an hour, you go reel in to check your bait, and all that's left is the skin. They take it right down to the skin, which is pretty impressive. So all part of the fun. But when you do, we did have a few, what we were quite certain were sturgeon hits, but the difference is pretty obvious. Like the rod tip goes straight down. So it does cause a bit of excitement when you're first out there, but once you've been out for a couple hours, like, yeah, you can tell the difference between the different bites and stuff like that. So kind of fun to get a feel for that. We didn't actually catch any fish that day. I guess overall, even though some of the other teams reeled in some nice fish, it was actually a bit of a slower day than what they're used to. And one of the theories that Rick kind of pitched to us was that because there's so many people fishing on the river, they're actually feeding off all the heads and the whatever people are getting rid of, like if they're gutting the fishes and stuff like that. So it's just like a smorgasbord for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes
there's tons of salmon in there already.
Yeah, exactly. So he said sometimes what'll happen is they're just pretty full, and what they can do is they'll find the bait. So it could be a fish head, it could be a big chunk of salmon on the hook, and they'll actually just lay on it and just like, maybe eat it later or whatever. So when they're not that hungry, they're not going to hit it too hard. They might just sort of like play around with it and decide if they want to eat it or not. And then sometimes the pike minnows will cause a bit of competition. So sometimes it is good that the pike minnows are around, because if they're trying to take the bait, then the sturgeon might just go for it and try and get it anyway. So
you're saying you might have had a sturgeon just laying across all 4 hooks?
Yeah, potentially. But like they'll just find the one. So if you have a fish head out there, they'll see it and they'll just like lay on top of it, right?
Yeah, it's like a grizzly bear.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of what I was thinking when he was talking about that. Anyways, a lot of fun, man. It was a bit of a cooler day out there. But the beautiful thing is, as you've already kind of touched on, when we pulled back up to the park there, everything was ready to rock and roll. The barbecues were already running. The tables were all set up. So it's kind of like, magically for everybody who's been out fishing all day, you come back and everything's just there without any real...
the volunteers are holding their backs.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's keeled over. Let's talk about the menu. You were helping the chef and stuff like that. So you got some good insight into that.
Yeah. So Russ, my understanding is he's been a volunteer in the couple of years past. And the first time they needed some help in cooking some salmon and some fish, and he stepped in, and they realized, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. And the last couple of years, he's actually just taken control of this dinner situation, and he literally works like all year, him and his wife, to put menus together, to gather wild game. So just to give you guys a sample of the menu, an interesting one was cougar backstraps.
Yeah, really good.
With apple and apricot chutney on a crostini. So that was more of an appy, but there's actually, I noticed some people walking by and they're like, oh, what are you guys cooking? And he's got this like perfectly cooked cougar tenderloin there that they probably think is pork tenderloin.
Yeah, these are just people in the park.
Just in the park. And they want to try it. It started conversation. So that's a side note, but I just thought that was cool. Grilled chorizo sausage with cougar as well. Lots of sockeye salmon dishes.
Yeah.
Greek style elk and lamb grilled to perfection on a cast iron flat top, grilled pita bread, and creamy cucumber yogurt.
Man, those were good. We're standing there
30 of those
with a group of guys just having a beer and stuff like that. And it seems like every time I finished one, there was somebody coming behind us with another platter. So like, yeah, sure, keep them coming. I ate like 40 of those things. They're amazing.
Yep. Actually, I should mention the cougar was actually a kill that it kept coming into a sheep farm. It was domestic sheep. So they had to get rid of the cougar, but that ultimately became useful meat in this banquet, which was great. Another note that we did have lamb at the event, and that was MOVI positive.
Yep.
So going back to previous episodes, this lamb was affected, and you can eat these animals. That's what the Wild Sheep Society of BC is trying to push is, if we can get rid of these animals, we can eat them, we can make use of them, but then we can replace them with healthy animals. So,
yeah, I guess eating MOVI off the landscape is kind of the idea behind that.
Yep.
And that is a great conversation starter because I mentioned that to Ashley. She's like, oh, gross. She didn't know what that was. And I explained it to her. She's like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that sheep has pink eye. Well, I'm not going to eat it.
Not going to eat his eyes.
It's just like totally unrelated to the protein.
Yeah.
We did have a lot of moose and elk.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, full-blown grilled steaks, sliced, and, some sauces on there, which were awesome. But I took way too much food. I'm just touching on a couple of these items here, but there was so much food. It was insane. Russ did a great job in like taking control. He drew a line around the whole workspace and said, like, if you don't have a job, you're not to be within this area. And if you weren't doing something, that he would essentially just kick your ass out. And you have to be that way.
You have to, yeah. Especially in a chef's world, man. That's how they work. If you think about how many people they're feeding, it's incredible. So there's a lot of pressure on him to move all that food out there.
Exactly. It was a full-blown appies to entrees to dessert and more than enough food for everybody.
Hats off to everybody that put that together.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome. So we've talked a lot about the fish side of things, and the whole point of the Jurassic Classic is to raise money for wild sheep. So here's a clip from both Chris and Kyle talking about the event and where the money goes.
Chris Barker, I'm a projects chair for Wild Sheep Society of BC, I'm director for Wild Sheep Foundation. So Jurassic Classic started off as a fishing tournament about 3 years ago. I think it was a brainchild of Jim Glakar's in conjunction with Trevor Carruthers and Kyle Stelter, and I don't know if Dean approached him from Great Rivers, but the collaboration has grown into. But all the money we raise, or that these guys raise, all goes back on the ground for sheep.
In terms of money, yeah, our first year was modest. We were just trying to get our feet on the ground, and we still were successful. We just wanted to be profitable. We wanted to not lose money on it. We thought if we can make money this first year, next year, hopefully we'll turn this into something and grow it. So I think we made around $15,000 that first year. Last year, we tripled that effectively. And it'll be interesting to see what we do this year, but we've seen more growth again this year. The funds from this, because it's a BC-driven project with our 3 groups, the money stays on the ground in British Columbia. So we put the money back in here. And one thing that the Wild Sheep Foundation sort of said to us in supporting the Jurassic is they'd like to see support for northern thin horns and southern projects, not just the money to go in the south or the north. They'd like to see that split up in some capacity. So we supported a couple of disease-related programs. There was Dr. Adam Herring in the Okanagan had a Seroptes mite treatment program, and we were involved in that. We've committed $30,000 to a northern burn project, which we were hoping to go this spring, but because of a variety of reasons, actually, it didn't happen. And ideally, we'd like to see that burn happen, but we've allocated $30,000 for that for this fall, and ideally that'll go ahead. And so we put kind of a split in the north and the south, and burn projects in the north and south, and disease-related projects in the south. There's a Region 6 disease testing program we were working on with the government as well. Up there, we've invested $5,000 in the Wild Sheep Foundation, and Wild Sheep Society BC is part of that as well. So we're involved in that program. So yeah, we've kind of tried to spread that money across the province and reinvest it into. The one thing about it is we were asked that it go back to conservation. We didn't want to do studies or counts or anything like that. It was on the ground work. So disease-related stuff, burns, habitat restoration, that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Just get ready on it, you know what I mean? But I almost guarantee you that look pretty quick, again.
So obviously the Wild Sheep Foundation is a big part of pulling this event together as well. We sat down with President and CEO Ray Thornton, and we asked him about their involvement with this event.
We were involved from the very get-go, and I guess it's maybe more of just the umbrella side of things, as Mama Bear. But we're here primarily in a support role. Wild Sheep Society of BC is the big lead with Guide Outfitters Association of British Columbia and BC Wildlife Federation. So it's a coalition. It was just kind of a great idea to bring all the BC organizations or the primary organizations together to work for a common cause. And I think Trevor Carruthers and Kyle Stelter's vision was it would be nice to have the Wild Sheep Foundation moniker on it as well, just to show cohesiveness, show cooperation, and that we're all gonna work together. We all have our focus. Obviously, Wild Sheep Foundation and Wild Sheep Society of BC are tied at the hip, as we are to maybe a lesser degree to Guide Outfitters Association of BC. We've been a sponsor and partner of them for many years. But we got a little toe in BC Wildlife Federation as well. We're all for wildlife, we're all for conservation, we're all sportsmen and women, so it just fits. But we're here in more of a supportive role. So we've got our chairman of the board, Brett Jefferson, here. I've got 2 of my conservation staff here. Kevin Hurley, our vice president of conservation and operations. We've got Clay Brewer, who is our Bighorn programs lead. He's also one of our conservation director, and then me. So we got a nice team here. You guys chatted with one of our directors, Chris Barker. He's here. I mean, we just want to show support. Wild Sheep Foundation, lends some financial support, obviously, to the Classic as well. And we're here tonight for the banquet, and I think all of us are going to be spending a little bit of money. So, just going to support the cause, having a great time.
So we've talked a lot about collaboration and progressiveness in the conservation space in BC. And I think the Jurassic Classic is a great example of that. Here's Chris, Kyle, and Gray talking about collaboration, conservation, and the people involved.
Yeah, so obviously the Wild Sheep Society of BC, BCWF, Guide Outfitters Association. Obviously, the Wild Sheep Foundation's jumped on board with full support. Great River. And then, the sponsors that the guys have, put together now.
The Wild Sheep Foundation does a great job of bringing us together. They have that motto, one tent, one campfire. And I believe strongly in that and support it greatly. And then what we do is we basically work with other organizations, chapters and affiliates, SCI clubs, and we reach out to them, and they sell teams at their fundraisers. So we actually sell 2 teams at Sheep Showdown in Reno each year, one on one of the evening nights and then one at the Life Members Breakfast. We sell teams at SCI Colorado. They've supported us. So we have clubs like that all across chapters and affiliates. Midwest was involved, the Wild Sheep Foundation Midwest. Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta supported us right from day one. They've actually taken 2 teams through their Edson chapter and Alberta chapter as well. So Wild Sheep Society BC, obviously we take a couple of teams every year, Guide Outfitters. So we have a lot of support, and it's quite a large group that comes together, and it's kind of neat that we're out there on the water and we're sort of almost competing, but we're collaborating, and all that money is just going back to wild sheep conservation. So that's the cool part of it for me, and getting all these people together that are really passionate about wildlife and conservation too.
New this year, we've got a huge supporter, which is also our official sponsor, Sitka Gear. There's great camo patterns out there. There's all great companies, but I gotta just say something about Sitka Gear. Man, they put their money where their mouth is. They are so engaged in our industry. They are so engaged in wild sheep conservation and so engaged in Wild Sheep Foundation. They're going to help us out with the disease film this year. They're our official sponsor, and they do a great thing in British Columbia, supporting Wild Sheep Society of BC, supporting Guide Outfitters Association of BC, and they're also a little north of us here, our Yukon chapters being supported for them. So kind of a title sponsor, I guess, if you will, of the Jurassic Classic this year. We've got Corey Piersol up from Sitka's headquarters in Bozeman, so just a shout out to them too.
My name's Corey Piersol. I work for Sitka Gear. I've been with Sitka for 7 years now. Work customer service and the pro channel, and help out on the conservation front. We kind of all help out on the conservation front. The reality that you don't see many conservation organizations pull together. So like we said, the conventions, trade shows, etc. You get the Wild Sheep Show, some other shows, Dallas Safari Club, SCI. But to see Wild Sheep Society of BC, BC Wildlife Federation, and GOABC pull together, 3 different organizations come together for a cause that also uniquely benefits different species, right? So I think most of us are here for the sheep, but there's also, from what we've listened from Dean and Rick, talking about white sturgeon. And I mean, there's a real concern for white sturgeon. So to see different organizations, but then also to see a more holistic approach, right? Ecosystem thinking is really strong for us, and that it's not just on one species, but it's on several species that we're bringing awareness and raising funds for is pretty unique. I might be abusing the word unique, but it's kind of the nice thing about this event, to have a ecosystem thinking, to consider what it is that we do in our actions, and how they affect, not to sound lame or corny, but in reality, for me, my 1 and 3-year-old are important to me, right? And so ensuring that whatever it is that we're doing now doesn't, negatively impact what they're going to be left with. And what opportunities do we have to improve, to better, to ensure that what we're experiencing now is not just here, but better. And I think in Sitka's DNA, when I say Sitka, really everyone in the office, they all care passionately about wildlife, the environment, public lands, all those things. And so it's just important to us. We support a lot of efforts from a lot of different organizations the best that we can. We do have a grant program that's coming out. For us, it's more about getting involved in the projects instead of just spending money. It's we need to spend money because we're a business, and we're a profitable business, and if we can help nonprofits empower their projects, help them achieve their goals. But for us, it's understanding what the projects are and seeing those projects come to fruition. That's more of what we want to hear about and be involved in, whether that's land acquisition or, burns or, winter range restoration, whatever that is, just being involved, knowing about it and supporting it.
So that there was Corey Piersol from Sitka. We had an awesome time fishing with him, which leads us to Sunday, second day on the river. And you got to come out with us as well this time around. Mm-hmm. The opening clip is Corey and I reeling in the same sturgeon. So what happened was we hooked one, and we hooked it on my line, and we didn't get all the lines in quick enough, and it wrapped itself around Corey's rod. So we thought it looked like a double header because the way it was sort of timed and the way it hit the second rod looked like another fish. So we were super pumped thinking we're reeling in two sturgeon. And of course, all of a sudden mine lets go, lost it, and so did his at the same time. So we looked at each other like, okay, we definitely had the same fish on, but it was still fun. That was only like a few minutes after, I don't know, maybe we were out there for 45 minutes.
Yeah, not even.
We were waiting for Naomi to come and join us in the boat. So we were actually like, within visual distance from the actual boat launch, and there's fish biting right there, which was pretty wild. We kind of wanted to mix up the day a little bit with doing a bit of salmon fishing too. But after we got that first sturgeon bite, we're like, okay, let's focus on sturgeon for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. So we hung out there for a bit, and then we headed up the river to a cool spot where the Harrison River meets up with the Fraser River. Pretty cool because it's like a very distinguished line of like watercolor. You can see exactly where the two officially meet.
Yeah, one's very kind of emerald green color, and the other one's more, a muddy kind of silty color.
So we dropped the lines here, and since Corey and I both had our fish on, I guess not technically, but sort of, the rod was up for grabs for you. So
yeah, so it wasn't necessarily a short time frame from like the bite you guys had to where the second bite happened. There's a couple hours in between, I believe. But lots of good times, hanging out and talking to everybody, and just an adventure on the river it's cool. I've never really experienced that jet boat kind of experience on a river like the Fraser. So that was cool. And then
big shout out to Rodney for taking us out. That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, this is just his boat, right? He's not working really for anybody. He's just wanting to take people out. So that was awesome. But yeah, the rod, all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's a sturgeon bite. So we pulled it out of the holder, and I all of a sudden have this, similar to halibut or lingcod fishing, you get this pad and I get this pad wrapped around my waist like a belt almost, and you could put the rod in there and reel, right?
I think they had a name for it.
I think they did. But you need it, right? Like, you can tell that this fish isn't the biggest sturgeon ever caught, and you can check it out on our Instagram. But in terms of fish, period, it's a big fish, and they do fight. So it was pretty exciting to have one of those fish on. It was a first for me. And then we finally get it to the side of the boat, and with bigger sturgeon, you don't really want to be taking it out of the water. This was kind of within the range where it was okay to do it safely. And Rodney's great from a care and fish handling perspective.
Definitely, man. It's pretty cool how calm they are, and he was super gentle with it, got it in there, got the hook out, and the thing was just kind of laying there. We just got it up, took a quick photo, and he put it right back in. It was cool, man. And the thing did not seem too phased by the whole situation. They're very calm, which is really interesting to observe. Such cool animals, man.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch something like that is pretty cool. But yeah, it was a great time, and really fortunate to kind of be able to catch one of those guys. And I'm sure we'll go back. And
definitely.
I think that's the other thing to note is that, you can get a group of guys together, and it's not totally unreasonable to go spend a day with some of these guys, and you can participate in this as well. if you're in the area.
I had an awesome time. Let's just finish things off here with sort of some closing thoughts from all the guys that were involved here.
I think your listeners have the opportunity to say, well, this is what these groups are doing. This is why they're doing it. And, they may not be sheep hunters, but it doesn't really matter. It's still conservation. So if they're into elk or deer or whatever it is, it's still the same thing, right? It's let's get that word out and let's start spreading the word about what hunters do. What we do is good for wildlife.
Isn't it wild that we're focusing in on some prehistoric fish that really needs help. And boy, does Dean know his sturgeon, first and foremost from a conservation standpoint, but, secondly from a sport fishery. But yeah, pretty cool to mix the two together. You've got dinosaurs being utilized on a sustainable basis and released to raise money for something that we don't want to be a dinosaur. And that's BC's, thin horn and bighorn populations.
Yeah, although there's a couple things that, again, our Wild Sheep Foundation family, there's just been a ton of support from some really important people in that organization that have been such a great supporter of everything wild sheep, and the Jurassic Classic's no exception. And then our three organizations, just great support from them as well in making it happen. And I just want to say thank you to you guys as well for being able to share this story and coming out and be a part of this. And I know you guys' time is precious, and you guys took the time to come out and volunteer and talk to us and learn about what we're doing here. And so I'm very thankful for what you guys have done there as well, and really happy to have you as part of this event. So.
Trevor and Kyle, thank you. There's so many names to thank in this industry, specifically, Brett, Gray. I'm going to forget people's names, Chris, but all those individuals that, they're not in it, like for the fame or whatever that is. They're just passionate about it. Those are the people that are really important to us. And I think there needs, whether we recognize them or not, we just need to appreciate them. I think it's important to appreciate what those guys are doing and just say thank you. Not everyone says thank you all the time. It's nice to just hear, keep it up, keep doing what you're doing. So thank you, guys.
So I don't think we can top those remarks from Corey, Kelly. That is a perfect place to end this episode. Would like to say thank you to everybody who's involved and for inviting us out to this event. Hopefully we'll be there next year. If you've learned anything from this episode, it's that these various conservation groups are doing amazing work, and it takes people like you guys who are listening to get involved. So if you've been on the fence about joining one of these groups, whichever group makes sense to you, please go and become a member today. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.
This episode of Rookie Hunter was also brought to you by North Arm Knives. North Arm Knives are handcrafted and sold directly through a father and son team right here in British Columbia. Choose from a selection of outdoor knives, kitchen knives, and custom engravings from northarmknives.com. They ship internationally and guarantee all of their work. Kelly and I have put their products to the ultimate test and give them our stamp of approval. Head over to northarmknives.com.